Hello everyone, this is Crossfire. Welcome to another tutorial on Unity 3D and Playmaker. Today we will be looking at how to make a first-person shooter, and we will be covering the basic stuff. So let's get started. So this is a simple scene that I have created in my project Learning Unity. So this is our camera. So we don't need a camera right now because we'll be creating a first-person shooter. So it will be attached to the game object that we will be creating. So I'll just create it plain, and I'll just reset its transform to the origin. And what I would do is create a capsule, and then if you look at it, we need only the uh, capsule collider, and we don't need the mesh renderer as we want a realistic uh, you know humanish kind of player. So what we need to do is we can turn this down to 0.25 so that it would not be so fat, and that's it. Yeah, I'll just turn the directional light a little bit off. Yeah, so now we can actually see the bounding box of the capsule. So I'll just name this player underscore collision box, or just say collision, and this will be our player's collision, and we will create a camera inside this and bring it out, and then we would just go up, and we need the camera to be somewhat outside the collision. So as you can see, it's a little bit here, and I would drag this down to a 0.01 so that we can see all the things that are in front of the camera irrespective of their distance from the player. So that would do. So you can see that this player collision has this capsule collider. Then I'll just remove the mesh renderer and add in a widget body to it. Yeah, so we need our X rotation, which is this, to be locked, and as well as this on the Z axis to be locked. So we can do that by just making this. So now the player can only uh, turn in the sideways, which we need. So that is the basic adjustment with the widget body component over here. So let's just uh, minimize it, and we'll say that we need, I'll just add an empty object and call it player, and this player I will just drag it into the player collision and reset its position and drag it out. Now I'll just pair these two to this player, and the camera I'll just make an empty game object inside this so that I can uh, create an object at its position, and I'll just drag the camera outside, and this would be our follow position, and underscore camera. So this would be our camera position. So this is entirely our player. And what we need to do now is go to Playmaker and add a quick FSM that would say follow, and in this first state we would just say follow, and I'll just give it a move towards, which is a simple action that makes it move towards a particular object. So that is going to be our follow position underscore camera. So I'll just take this to none, and we will not have any finish distance. So finish distance is basically like if you want the enemy to stop at a distance of 1 unit, so he would come to the player less than 1 unit and stop right there, and you can add in elements of shooting or crouching or something like that, so that is useful here. So now it is set to 0 since we are uh, looking for the camera to move into its position. So I'll just leave it like that, and now I would use the player to actually move. I'll just add a quick FSM, and I'll call this FSM movement underscore player, and in this I would use the accesses in the built-in Unity accesses, which you can find it in edit, project settings, and input, and you can go to access, and here you can find vertical and horizontal accesses, which you can see are you can even create a new axis if you want. So I'm going to use these two, which are a WSD, or left, right, up and down arrow keys. So that is going to be useful. So I'll just go to player, and in first state I'll say input. So I'll just get axis. So this is going to be my horizontal axis, and I'm going to copy this, and this is going to be our vertical axis. So now I'll just store it into, let's say, horizontal it's 80, and this is WS. So I'll just go to translate, and in this I will just look at the gizmos right here, and when we press WS we need it to go into the Z axis, and this is going to be our 80 because we need the player to move like this. So that is strafing. So I'll just leave it like that and hit play. Okay, we have some serious errors. Okay, that's not cool. Console, yeah. This has some serious problem. I would just pause the video for a second and I'll just get back. So be right back. Okay, so the console error was related to some networking stuff that I wanted to test out, but it didn't work very well. So I just deleted that project files which I was working on. So I just learned a networking. Um, you know, if you play Doodle Army, I kind of learned that kind of networking system where you host a room through a hotspot and the other players join you and you can play with them. So that is cool, but this console error keeps showing up. So that is going to be, yeah, so it's working, I guess. So you can see now that we have our player moving, and I'll just split this view for you to see. And if I go to player, play collision, and see this, rigid body, so you can see that we have movement, but we don't have it as smooth as which we need. So I'll just go to player, back to the input, and change these to, let's say, 5 and 5 in the vertical as well. And what we need to do right now is we need a simple script that needs to turn our player towards where the camera is looking, and we need to also give the camera the power of looking around. So that is basically called mouse look. So let's go to file and just search for mouse look, and we have changed these to 3 and 3. So that's the normal sensitivity for this stuff. Sorry about that. So we have another thing to do, which is creating a game object in front of the camera so that the player recognizes this game object and turns towards it. So this is called player look at. Let's name that it, and let's go back to player, and then I'll just say smooth look at. So we'll give a target object, which is this, and we need to give it a full speed of 15 and no finish tolerance. So that's finally what we need. So let's take a look. I'll just hit play and hope it works fine. Yeah, so okay, we have still that weird issue of the axis. So let's check the axis. Okay, I think I changed it to 5. That's weird. Yeah, so I'll just save this. My project files are totally, you can see that this is a mess. So I'll just say FPS Unity, and then yeah, so it's saved, and now I can hit play, and the multiplier is 5. So if I drag this here, except that the axis is inverted, so I can look around and I can go where I look. So that's pretty cool. I feel like applying some game, but you know, the visual quality is not up to the mark. So let's fix that, as well as we'll invert the axis. So we'll go to mouse look, and then y sensitivity would be -3, so that we can invert the axis. So I'll just save it, and then we have this game. Actually, you would want to have something like anti-aliasing, so that it covers up the edges, sharp edges, and makes it smooth. So you can observe that right here. So I use that for polishing. Everyone uses that for polishing, of course. So we can add something like a head bob movement when the player is moving. So that would actually give some good effect for our game. So let's just create an FSM for the camera and say head bob movement. So in the first state, I will check for movement, and as you can notice that head bob movement is only when the player moves or something like that. So basically it's for walking. So we can actually do this by, let's say, get access, same thing. And maybe we should do this only for walking straight ahead and not for the horizontal movement. So I'll go to vertical, and we'll just make it the same that we had. So I'll store it in another variable, that is ws, as I did before. And what we need to do here is maybe use a float compare. Let's actually make this an inspector variable so that we can see the variable right here. So if I hit play, we can monitor the variable in the inspector panel. So okay, so the maximum is 5. So if it exceeds, is that laggy? Isn't that laggy or something like that? No, it's going pretty fine. It's kind of jumping. Let's take a look. I'll just drop the scene menu right here and go to the player collision. Now it's moving smooth, I guess. Yeah, I hope it is not jittering. Yeah, so it's good, doing pretty fine. I was just kind of doubting it was not pretty fine. So what we were looking at is the head bob movement. So this value should be greater than 2.5. Let's add in a 2.5 to the float compare. And the float here would be ws, and it would check with 2.5, which is half the trigger for head bob movement. So when it is equal or greater than, it would do the head bob. So greater, go to head bob and every frame. So I'll just link this to a new state, and in this new state it would start head bob. So in this we need it to kind of have two states, head bob 2, and it would kind of shuttle between these two states until unless this float compare will actually compare these, and if it is less than yeah, it is okay. If it is less than, it would go back to the first state. So I'll go to just say start or something like that, and I would link it to the first state. So the same goes to this as well, and go to start. So at the first state it would check for the get access, and if it exceeds 2.5, then it would go to head bob movement, which does that weird kind of floating kind of thing. So I would just say or something like we should check out iTween actions, which would be right here. Yeah, punch position would do good, but it should be very slow. So I would do a 0.05 or something like that in the X and Y actually. Okay, yeah, let's visualize this. It would go like this. So we want a positive one and a negative one in the X. So 0.05 as well. And this would be very slow. In the world space, yeah, or this is space. It doesn't matter because it won't be prevented. That would be secondary if the camera would be prevented. So let's actually make okay, this doesn't work. This is so awkward, but this doesn't work just because we should actually be controlling this instead of the camera, because we have a move towards action right here that would uh, you know intersect with the new FSM that we were making. So let's leave head bob like that, or we can do that later because it is just an animation that we need to do. So we can do that animation right away, adding a tab animation and then creating a new animation. Let's say Bob, something like that. And the first one would be like this: add transform position, and then we need to get back or something like that. So if I remove this animator thing and just say we have an animation down here, and size of animations is 1, and then we have Bob in that, so play automatically and just for testing. So we'll just play it. Let's test how that works. Okay, it should be made legacy, I guess. Yeah, so that's a problem with the legacy animations. You can go to debug right here and mark that as legacy and go back to normal and say loop and hit play. So that should work. There you can see that it's working fine. It's like the player is drunk or something. Yeah, that is seriously cool to have a lively camera that is good. So go back to the player, and instead of having it in the camera, we would just have this head bob movement in the player. So it takes the same thing. We should have copied those. So this is vertical, and let me do it very quickly. Go to store, float compare, and I would take WS and compare it to 2.5, and if it is equal, then play, or greater, then it would just say play, and it would go to play animation, and we need to specify the game object, which is the follow position of the camera, Bob, and then we need to just copy these and paste them here, and then say if it is less than 2.5, then it would go to finished, and that would go back to the first state, and that's it. So let's turn off the play automatically here, and that should do good. And now if I exceed 2.5 on the vertical axis, okay, we have another problem. That is, if it comes back to the first state, then it would stop the animation. Stop animation, and I would take the follow position camera and say Bob. So let's expand this area so that we can actually go far. So that's it as far as I know. So let's test this. I'm idle, I'm not moving. So if I go, yes, we can exactly take a look at the movement, but it is not that noticeable. So let's go back to animation, and you can tweak the animation of this thing. maybe even a little bit up, and that should do. Go back to, and now maybe it should be noticeable. Yeah, it is doing fine. Or we could just use a up and down animation for the head movement. That would be better than moving left and right. Okay. Okay, that is a problem because we use the uh, legacy animation window. We can actually make this a non-legacy, there's that animator here. We could use this as our animation, support that would actually blend between the states. So I recommend using this because I use this because we needed to do it quick. So you can just convert it to, let's go to animator and then turn this off and then drag this up. Okay, we should actually, yeah. So you can see that this has some movement going on, and you can see that legacy animation Bob cannot be used because legacy animation are not supported, blah blah blah, and all this. Now you can use it here. So that's how it works. But actually you need to have an idle animation for the follow position camera, which would actually say idle bar. So I'll just save it, and this would just take in the same position, and that's it. So that is the idle animation. So now you can actually create a state empty, and then you can go to idle Bob, which we can find him here. So this state is idle, and we can set this idle and then press enter to. Now this is the main state, and it would go to idle Bob as soon as the player is moving, and it would shuttle back to the idle animation when we are not holding W. So we can create parameters in here and then go to float and then vertical, and in this we would like to have a condition that would say if I have a vertical float of 2.5 or greater than that, it would go to idle Bob, and then if it is less than 2.5, it would go back to the idle state. So that's how these basic stuff works. Now we should, okay, maybe we should just untick these. Yeah, because we have conditions, we don't need the entire animation to be played. So now you can notice that there is no kind of jumping between states. There's a little jitter in the animation, but that was way better than the last one. So now we can add something like a jump for the player. Go to player and add an FSM and then jump. And in this we would say get key down, and that would be our space, and then send an event to add force and go back. Add force on the y-axis, that would be something like 200 or something on the self, and it would go back to the first state. So that's how a quick jump state would look like. So that almost took half a minute. Okay, we can't even notice. Alright. Okay, we didn't. That's the silliest mistake. You can see that it's working, but it is very less. So let's make it something like. Okay. Okay, it should work because it had shown an error before. So now if I hit space, okay, maybe the collision is, you can see that, okay, the collision is not with the player, so instead what we can do is just add, I mean, reframe the services of the capsule collider, and I'll just add this capsule collider to this and paste component values and go to widget body, copy component, and then paste values. Now it should, now we can even disable this. Now we can use the owner, which will be the player, and the follow position of the camera would obviously be along with the camera now. So you can see that we have our jumping ability, and we can jump. We can double jump, triple jump, and jump as much as we can, but we don't want that, so we'll be fixing that, and that is by removing this next frame event and adding a collision event, and we'll say on collision enter with the ground it would send an event to finish the jump. So what we need to do now is just take the plane and tag it as the ground, and that would do fine because now we can jump only once. So if I go to the player FSM, you can see that we can't jump until it returns to the first state. So that is pretty cool. Oh, that is cool jumping. We have air control going on, but we need to kind of give it something like 300 or something because it is very small kind of jump. this kind of, it's weird. Let's take a look at how this looks like. Yeah, that is doing pretty fine. You can see that we can rotate our player and then go to different places, and then we can jump and do stuff. We can even add a spring component, which should be, no, actually that it is kind of experimental, this stuff, because we can add a rigid body component to the camera and make it kind of bouncy with the player. Yeah, so let's try that. I'm not suggesting you to do it, but I'll just try it. I'll show you how it kind of happens with it. So let's try and hit play. I hope it works fine. It's going to be funny. Yeah, you can see that. Oh, fish. Now it has some spring effect. No, it doesn't have. Okay. We can use gravity. It is kind of. Let's try this. Okay, that sucks. So this experiment failed, and seriously, I kind of tried how to make that spring effect with the camera, but it worked once, and I forgot how did I do it. So I'll get back to you on how to do that spring effect, which would make our player like you can feel the spring effect when you jump and land on a surface. It would go down and come back like this. So that is an amazing effect that I would suggest you to use in your game development workflow. So I'll be seeing you in my next tutorial. This is a simple, kind of first person basics. So this is one way of doing it, and I already posted a video on how to make a first person shooter, but that was uh, kind of using the basic rigid body first person controller that comes with Unity, you know, with the characters package. So this is quite a basic start. So we will be doing more stuff on it. I'll be adding some models that I will be doing in Blender. So this is my workflow that I try to keep it as simple as possible. I use GIMP for texturing most of the time, but not much Paint.net, so no Photoshop. So I'm broke. Just kidding. I'll just see you in my next tutorial. Until then, I will see you. Like, bye. Okay, that's weird. See you in my next tutorial.